Hello and welcome to Economic Forum, where we discuss various issues affecting our economy in Zimbabwe. My name is John Masugu. Today, my guest is Engineer Watson Hlangabeza, who is a supply chain management specialist. Engineer Hlangabeza, welcome to Economic Forum.
Thank you, John.
Just looking at my products in front of me here, a pen and a notebook. They are a result of a supply chain. So we're going to be talking about the management of a supply chain related to different products and how it fits in with our blueprint, the National Development Strategy. And that's all embracing. I'm not only talking about what I have in front of me. So if you could just begin by telling us what a supply chain and supply chain management are and how we're moving towards our vision, towards our strategic goal as a nation.
Supply chain, basically, it is the handling of the flow of goods and services from the manufacturer of the raw products through to the consumption by the end user, who is the consumer. So that whole process from the manufacturer of the raw product all the way to the end user, that is the supply chain. So there is an element of coordination, there's an element of integration, there's an element of control. And throughout that chain, it's a chain because we are having various players involved. The primary producers, the secondary producers, and in all those to be intertwined, there is the logistics element, the movement. And what is key is the information aspect. And to a very large extent, that is the thing that is really moved, like we have highlighted, the digitalization. What we have seen that has moved significantly in the recent years is the employment or deployment of ICTs. The other word that we can use for supply chain is value networks. Both at each stage of the supply chain, there are activities or processes that add value. Because what the customer wants is a product or service which is at a certain value. And the money that he pays is for that value that he wants. And the supply chain basically is the addition of a value on a product. Say I can take an example of maize. The farmer produces the maize and it is taken to a mill where that maize is converted into the powder that we then use to produce either the sadza or whatever flour that you want. So that is the value chain. At each stage of the chain, there's some value addition.
If you could just explain something very interesting, at times interchangeable, value chain, supply chain, logistics, very briefly, so that those terms are understood in context.
Supply chain, we are looking at the flow, which actually the flow, it then entails there's a channel, which is the logistics element. Goods and services, they flow through a channel, which can be in form of either telecommunication channels, our road networks, our rail networks, even the airlines. There are channels through which goods and services they flow. And that is the logistics element.
And value chain?
The value now, when a primary producer produces, say, a good, that good, we need to add some value. In other words, we are removing the undesirable elements of such a product because it's raw. There are some undesirable characteristics of that product that the end user can't consume. The end user wants sadza or a polish, but maize in its raw form, it can't make sadza, it can't make porridge. It has to go through a chain of processes, and that is the value addition. That a chain of processes or activities, it could be through the industry, manufacturing systems or whatever, to add value to that maize, so that it becomes something that the consumer wants.
Yes. But Watson, as things change, when we go through this evolution, while we're digitizing, we're coming up with new technology, there's also the issue about manpower, where they say we used to be employed by such an organization, but we've been retrenched due to changes in technology and so forth. How do you deal with that as you improve the value chain, as you digitalize?
What happens with the digitalization and employment of ICTs? We are creating other areas of employment. What happens is we want our value chain system to be more efficient, to be more economic in terms of the cost. But in the whole process, we are adding in other activities, like when you talk of the Internet of Things, there's employment creation in that area. When you talk of artificial intelligence, it's another area where we are creating employment as well. Like we have seen during the post-COVID era, the COVID era and the post-COVID, we have really seen employment of ICTs, people working from home, visual meetings and all such things. For such products to be used, it means there's a lot of software engineering that has happened. There's a lot of hardware engineering that has happened for us to be able to conduct visual meetings, for us to be able to conduct even exchange information. We are now moving with our offices on our phone. You can transact on your phone, you can communicate, you can source, you can buy on your phone. So, well, at least we can say we have automated, we have employed high-tech in the industry, but in some way, there's employment creation in other areas that we have not been employing previously.
And then how do you deal with the manpower itself in terms of moving forward with it so that they don't think that the whole process is actually retrogressive? Because one's father has been working and then is been laid off because the work that they've been doing has been taken over by technology. Is it something that is a problem really in supply chain management, dealing with the mindset?
Of course, it's a problem, but it's not really a big issue. Because if you look at the government programs, the education programs that the government is promulgating, like the Education 5.0, they are picking up these trends that are happening. That industry is not static, it's dynamic, and that those changes, they are becoming very radical and very rapid at the same time. It used to take some years to jump from one technological approach to the other, but now it's a matter of even days. We jump from one technological approach to the next. So the talk generally from the government side and even in the industry, the talk of continuous professional development, the talk of the industry, the Education 5.0, the heritage-based education system, is embracing the new trends that we need to re-equip ourselves technically. We need to employ these new technologies. We need to continuously develop ourselves professionally so that we become relevant to the time and the global trends that are happening.
Yes, that's Watson Hlangabeza, who is our guest today. He's a supply chain management expert or specialist coming from the engineering background, and is telling us about what supply chain is all about. I gave an example earlier on about the products that I have in front of me, that they are products of the supply chain management for them to be in front of me on this desk. We'll continue talking about that, especially how that fits into our National Development Strategy 1 in the second segment and also in the third segment. So join us then. We are now in the second segment of Economic Forum, where today we are discussing supply chain management, how the products that we use, how the communication that we do comes to us. And we've invited Watson Hlangabeza, who is an engineer as well as a supply chain management specialist, who is telling us about what it was like in the past, where we are now, and where we are going into the future. And in fact, Watson, where we are going into the future, That is where you are actually relating to the strategy of the government, that is the NDS 1.
Correct.
Now, how are we dealing with supply management or supply chain management within that context?
If you look at the NDS 1 and the Vision 2030 that the government is promulgating, it is actually in sync with the global trends in general. Like I said, this 21st century, we are in the fourth industrial revolution. And the fourth industrial revolution, there are key elements of that one, which include the artificial intelligence, smart factories, smart cities. In a nutshell, it's more about real-time data and information. That exchange of real-time data and information, besides the automation that we have seen in the third and second industrial revolution. So when you talk of these programs and policies that the government has put in place, which I'm saying even industry, we are embracing those. Because when we have issues of movement of goods, flow of information, there is no value addition in movement. Value addition only happens when there is a process or an activity that is really adding some value to a product. So we need to have efficient networks, whether road network systems. We need to have efficient networks, whether be it our ICTs, the way data moves, the way goods move.
Actually, while we are there, and this is not only between the specialists, but also down to the people. It has to cascade down to the people so that they are not left behind. If you could just also include that, because at times the general populace might just think that you, the experts, are just going ahead of them.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much. When we say efficiency, exchange of data and real time, in the 90s, when you want to pass on message to somebody, you had to either write a letter, which would take maybe two weeks, if not even more than that, to reach somebody. But as it is, because of this digitalization and the employment of ICTs, employment of big data, this Internet of Things, we are now talking of real-time exchange of information. It's a matter of either SMS, it's a matter of either a phone call, even transaction. I'm sure, like you are saying, we can do monetary transaction through various portfolios that are now available, the mobile networks, the mobile banking networks, all such kind, those kind of things. It's making things almost just on time. And that is the key thing that we are seeing the world going and taking.
While you are there, probably you can give us examples of some of our local products that we really, are pushing through the supply chain, that viewers can understand that in the past this was a bit slow, but with where we are going to, especially with our Vision 2030, the supply either of sugar, or any other products is going to be faster. You mentioned telecommunications, just to give a clear picture of what's happening on the ground.
Okay. Information, general communication, our communication system, really that area is sorted out. But with other programs that are coming on board.
You're saying it's sorted out, but we have instances where networks, just travel a few kilometers outside Harare, you can no longer communicate. Travel a few kilometers outside Bulawayo, you can no longer even listen to local radio stations and so forth. Just talk to us about how the improvement of all these can also help in the supply chain management.
If you are to make a call and someone picks up, there are some activities that happen on the background. So there are other issues or other areas that we still need to work on, like the issue of power. But I think government is doing something with respect to that in terms of improving our power generation. We are going green. I'm sure we are on the right track in terms of dealing with these things that we are, the services. That's a service we are talking about there.
Are we well invested in these things? Because we've seen some organizations, instead of employing new technology, they actually prefer to repair the old technology over and over again until it doesn't work.
We seem to have no option. But if we keep on holding on to the old, the new technologies, they bring in efficiency, they bring in speed, they bring in a lot of good things. In other words, if we keep holding on to that, we become uncompetitive and we end up just becoming consumers and not producers.
So my question is, do we have enough investment to bring in these new technologies that you're talking about? Are you happy so far?
Not really. A lot still has to be happening, but like you said, it's an investment, which talks of real capital. When you talk of high-tech technologies, they employ real capital. So Rome was not built in a day, but it's the direction that we are taking which is important. When you say by 2030, we need to be at this level, it's key. And we now need to start taking steps, like we are sorting out the issue of the road networks, we are sorting out the issue of power generation. It's very key in the value chain or the supply chain system network. It's very key. So
Watson, I'll stop you there. That's Watson Hlangabeza, who is our guest today on Economic Forum, and we're discussing supply chain management, giving us all those several examples. Let's meet in the third and final segment of the program. We are now in the third and final segment of Economic Forum, where today we are discussing supply chain management with Watson Hlangabeza, who is an engineer as well as a supply chain management specialist. Quite a lot that we've discussed in the first two segments. But now let's look at smart cities, smart factories, and also how, in order to achieve all these, public-private partnerships can also help.
for us to deploy these techniques that are in line with the global trends, it involves huge capital deployments. So the government and even local industry alone will not be able to achieve that, and they call for public-private partnerships arrangements. Because these are high technologies that we are talking about. They involve a lot of capital, a lot of skills, human skills. So government alone can't do it. Because when you talk of smart cities and smart factories, we are talking of, like I'm sure during the COVID era, we had seen quite a number going online to buy. And those are some of the elements of smart cities. It's not just online purchasing, but it's everything becoming very smart in the sense that we are employing robotics. So there's a lot of exchange of information, powerful management systems of information that are supposed to be there, powerful ICT systems that ought to be in place, and very good road networks, rail networks, they are supposed to be in place, and intelligent buildings. Because when you have all these things, there's a lot of employment of ICTs. So it applies as well to the industry, where our industry, our equipment, our factories ought to be intelligent, artificial intelligence, that's what they call it.
While we are there, you are going into the industry now. We're only talking about cities as we're talking about the development of the country. How far does it go? Does it only end with cities?
When we are moving, the logistics, the transport, there is no value addition. The government program of decentralization, devolution, is a good program because you don't need to move tomatoes from Toko to Harare for the value addition. You need to eliminate unnecessary movement so that you give more value to the end user. At the same time, of course, the corporates ought to be more profitable because we are eliminating those waste. So the decentralization, I'm sure, when it comes in, it will address all those issues. That is not just about the cities. No one is left behind. Even the rural areas When we are decentralizing, we are bringing power to the rural areas so that industries can be set up in there with these technologies that we are talking about, where exchange of information, exchange of data is real time.
And you're now going deeper into the factories, the smart factories.
We are in a global village, and we ought to be competitive as a country and as industry, like we are referring to the industry. So for industry to be competitive, they ought to produce goods at low cost and at the right quality. And the speed, like I said, is of essence. So when we are employing these smart technologies, artificial intelligence, automation, robotics, all such technologies, they reduce time, they improve quality, and at the same time, the production costs themselves, they become very much lower, and will then become competitive. And we'll be able not just to consume our own goods, but to be even able to export to other countries. So with the smart technologies that we are talking about, we, as a country, we are blessed with abundant sunlight. It's critical for us to have reliable power supply so that we really go smart. Because we need to have consistency in our products that we produce in terms of quality, timers delivery, timers production, and this depends on reliable supply of power.
We don't have to stop.
We don't have to stop. Because if stops, the energy is not human energy. It's a rate of energy that is driving everything.
Besides being an entrepreneur, you also teach some of these things. Are we on course in developing people who will come up with all these, who will improve our supply chain management, who are going to be part of these smart cities as well as smart factories? From your observation, as somebody who is capacitating youngsters at different polytechnics?
A lot is happening, and I'm sure with the program that the government has done, although in terms of resourcing, we still need to do more. But I've seen some developments in terms of attracting our guys that have been in the diaspora so that they can bring in some of these technologies. And I've seen some guys being taken out like we did in the early 80s, where we had sent our teams to various countries to tap in the new technologies so that we improve on our internal capacities. But yes, we are on track in terms of training and education in view of the new global trends.
Yes, that's Watson Hlangabeza was our guest today. Watson Hlangabeza was talking to us about supply chain management, its evolution, as well as how it fits into our National Development Strategy 1 as we look at Vision 2030. It's also given us various examples of where we can improve with regards to human capital, as well as capacitation of our own manpower. And the good thing that is just mentioned is that we also are able to go into other countries in order to learn from them, and also the public-private partnerships that he has just mentioned are also important in improving all these things, and that is what we had today. And I would like to thank you, Watson. Thank you very much for coming on to Economic Forum.
Thank you, John.
Yes. If you would like to get in touch with us on this program, you can do so on the numbers that are showing on your screen. And if you have missed some episodes of Economic Forum, you can watch them on our YouTube channel, which is Economic Forum Zimbabwe. So on behalf of the technical team, this is John Maso.